the delegate list together here, and there'll be 6 of us in the Unity. Now, we not only have the Unity ticket for the delegates, but we're also talking about the leadership of the 4th Congressional District going forward. And so with that, we have recommended that we put together our 4 great leaders that we are currently using in the Spartanburg-Greenville area. We want Nate to be the chair of the 4th Congressional District. We would like to have Robert Riggs as the first vice chair, and we would like to have William Crawford as the second vice chair, and then the secretary to be Lisa Watson, 4 very, very deserving candidates who will work to make the 4th Congressional District, which is the Spartanburg-Greenville counties, a great place.
It looks like we have Suzette Jordan with us right now. She is the executive committeeman for Greenville. Suzette, go ahead and say hi, and I believe you have another one of our favorites near you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Suzette Jordan, and I'm Greenville County's executive committeeman. I just want to thank everybody for registering to vote in the convention on Monday. But if you haven't, there are a few of you who still haven't registered. Please register by noon on Saturday. And I am joined by Linda Garner, our first vice chair.
Hi, just want to say thanks to Senator Timmons for being with us tonight. And just will ask for everybody to be sure and vote on Monday evening. You will be hearing from the South Carolina GOP, and they will give you instructions. And we appreciate so much you voting for the slate. Thank you very much.
Okay, it looks like we are approaching the 7 o'clock hour. So we have just about a minute left. Again, I want to thank WYFF for doing this with us again. It'll be live streamed on their site as well as the Greenville GOP site. Let me click a few buttons here to make sure we have everything ready to go. At this time, I am going to welcome Senator Scott Talley. Senator Talley, are you there?
I'm here. Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you for joining us. We also have Senator Ross Turner. Let me get that set up for you.
Hello, Nate. Good to see you.
Senator Turner, thank you for joining us. It looks like you have the press briefing on behind you. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah.
Great. We can kill 2 birds with 1 stone on that one. And a good friend of mine, our Congressman William Timmons. Congressman, are you there?
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for having me.
There we go. It looks like we have everything everyone at this point, except for our moderator, Taggart Houck from Channel 4. Taggart, are you there? There we go. Thank you all for joining us. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Taggart, and the rest of the time is yours.
Yeah, well, thank you, Nate, and thank you all for being here with us tonight. You know, I think one of the really useful things about this is we have this town hall format. We're able to kind of chat with folks and let everybody know what's going on right now amid really an unprecedented crisis with what we're dealing with here, the pandemic, COVID-19. But I would like to start, before we get too far, I think we'd like to just kind of talk generally speaking about the measures that each of you are taking right now, really at your respective levels when it does come to combating COVID-19 and working on issues there. So I guess first I'd like to start with Representative Timmons, if you could just kind of take us through, what exactly is going on, everything with your level right now, and what you're doing to help combat the COVID-19 pandemic.
Sure. So really 6-7 weeks ago, we started out with this whole theory that COVID-19 is not going to be worse than the flu. And, 40,000 people have died from the flu since October. This was not going to be any worse. That was the conversations we were having in DC. And I remember where I was sitting when the director of the CDC was very, very serious. And he said, this is going to be bad. This is going to be far worse than the flu. And things changed. Things changed very seriously. So we've done 3 things since that date, 6.5-7 weeks ago. Number one thing we did was phase 1, $8.5 billion was money to federal agencies to make sure they were prepared to do everything they could to, react to this. The next phase was phase 2, and that was 4 or 5 weeks ago, and that was additional money for testing, money for food insecurity. There was some requirements for businesses with under 500 employees to give paid leave, and there were some challenges with that, but we fixed that in phase 3. Phase 3 is what we've all been living through for the last 3 weeks, and that is first and foremost $1,200 for every American that paid less, filed taxes for less than $75,000 in their last filing. $500 for every child, and then there is the PPP loan program, which is originally $360 billion that ran out, but we're about to do another $300 billion. And what that is it's essentially trying to get small businesses to keep people employed. We do not want to put people on the unemployment rolls. We want to do everything we can to allow businesses to continue to operate and essentially float them through this storm. So after that, there's additional money for larger businesses. Those come with a lot of strings, but essentially the federal government has shut the economy down. So they need to make sure that we are able to weather this storm. Small businesses need to survive. Business needs to survive. The economy needs to endure through this time. We're doing everything we can to get through the next few weeks. We're going to open soon. Ultimately, the only thing that will get us through this is reopening, and we got to do that safely. We do that quickly, and we're working hard on that. So with that, I appreciate you having us on. Look forward to answering questions.
Yeah. So I do have one follow-up to that too. You mentioned it right there, PPP. We're talking a lot about the PPP. We talked a lot about the CARES Act too. At this point, how vital is it to ensure that there is a second round of those PPP loans for the business owners?
So we originally did $360 billion, and that was fantastic. It helped. We kept 15 million people off of the unemployment roll. So unfortunately, there's still thousands and thousands and millions of businesses that are trying to get these loans, and they deserve them because the federal government shut down their business. And so we're working hard to get this money to them. I do believe this money will pass. Another $300 billion is likely going to be passed here. It'll probably be signed into law in the next 48 hours. We're still working on the timeline, but the federal government shut down the economy. We do not have a problem with our economy. Our problem is COVID-19. We need to save lives. We need to flatten the curve. We need to slow the spread, and we need to make sure that we are able to reopen in a safe manner. But we have to do it quickly because the federal government does not have the ability to bankroll the economy. We have 25, 26, coming on $30 trillion of debt, and we need to reopen, but we have to do it safely, and we have to save lives. So this is going to pass this week, and I just hope that we can get reopened soon in a safe manner.
Very nice. All right. Well, thank you, Congressman Timmons. We appreciate that. How about we turn now to State Senator Ross Turner. We know there's been a lot going on at the state level too. Of course, earlier this week, some businesses really able to get back to work there with restrictions in place. But take us through a little bit of what's going on right now at the state level, Senator.
I think the state level, it kind of started for us a little bit, obviously, after DC, middle of March. We went back, passed a plan originally for DHEC to be able to staff up. It allowed DO to staff up. It was some emergency money early on, but at the same time, we were dealing with something we didn't know how it was going to work out or anything like that. I think the good thing is the one good thing I would say this, and this is the one thing about South Carolinians, is we've obviously been very compliant. I think that's the reason we're beating the curve here as well as we are. I think the opening of some small businesses and people still practicing social distancing, still understanding personal hygiene, still the things you have to do. But if a small business can let 4 or 5 people in and let them still shop and start getting it moving for them again, that's a good way to do it. I mean, when you go to Lowe's and Home Depot on the weekend, obviously there's plenty of people not scared to go into a shopping place. and buy things. And you know, I still think that's a personal decision. The good thing is the government's going to get out of the way and let people start making that personal decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you mentioned it there. Of course, the big talk this week is kind of starting to get back. We know some states like Georgia have started to have a little bit of looser restrictions than what our state has for certain businesses. But from this standpoint, you mentioned it there. A big key of this is, you know, people making their own decisions too. How much does that play into what you guys are doing here at the state level?
I think, you know, and obviously it's the governor issuing the emergency orders and that, but with a lot of input. I know he's had a lot of input from the leaders in the legislature, business leaders. I think right now it's to that point where let's start slowly loosening the restrictions. And then he's also formed the Accelerate SC task force group. And I think that's where he's starting to focus now. We know what we have to do to keep this from spreading, but now it's what do we have to do to jumpstart this economy when we get back. I've been lucky enough, President Peeler appointed me to the Accelerate SC from the Senate. So we'll be down there tomorrow meeting for the first time at 2:00. I know we're in an advisory role on the resource committee. I think it's broken into 5 different groups, but at the same time, I think that's going to be exciting to be down there and at least listening to business leaders from around the state, from all the different sections, education, from tourism, from restaurant association, from all these places, and get the ideas of what they think it's going to be to jumpstart the economy. You know, I don't think I think people are scared about how we're going to get back, but I still think there's also a huge fear of how long is it going to take us to get back to normal, especially for a small business owner. It's great I open my doors up tomorrow, but when am I making money again? And just 2 months, 8 weeks of protecting your payroll is a great help from the federal government, but there's plenty of businesses that are going to be a lot longer than 8 weeks affected. And how those manage this is going to be a big story.
Thank you, Senator Turner. We'll get back to you. We definitely want to talk about that task force in a little bit. We'll touch on that in just a little bit here. Senator Scott Talley, we also want to talk with you too. You know, everything going on at the state level. Kind of give us really kind of what you're going through and the measures that you've seen being taken here in the fight against COVID-19.
Well, thank you. A pleasure to be with you. I'll just follow up on what Senator Turner said. And obviously today, a big announcement in regards to education in the state of South Carolina. I know a lot of us have been fielding calls from constituents concerned about unemployment, be they employees who need help or employers who are looking for answers and trying to work through with the Department of Employment and Workforce as they make changes way based on what's been passed at the federal level. Obviously some different measures for self-employed folks that is not the norm, but certainly needs to be included in what we're dealing with now. So we continue to work with them to try to streamline that process, make sure people are getting answers and timely response to their application. And obviously with our schools, that's been something that's been on a lot of people's mind. A lot of questions with today's announcement, trying to continue e-learning, a lot of the decisions about how to handle that, as well as certainly our senior classes across the state of South Carolina being handled at the local level, but also looking through the summer. And I heard Superintendent Spearman say today that, you know, similar to Accelerate SC, she'll be putting together a task force of educators, of business leaders, of parents, teachers, legislators over the summer to look at how we approach going back to school so that we can keep moving forward. We can come out of this together, but we can also do it in a safe manner so that when our students and our teachers are back in classrooms, hopefully this fall, they will be in a safe environment, ready to learn and move forward.
Right. In a lot of ways, I mean, this is kind of uncharted territory, right? Like we're not really used to making decisions like these for something like this. We just haven't seen it before, not just at the state level, but really at all levels.
That's true. And, you know, we've seen that, I think, more in what my constituents have reached out about is questions with unemployment and obviously how they can relate with our local banks to try to apply for some of the loans on the federal level. It's new for everybody. You know, banks that have been doing SBA loans for a long time were having to learn this new process. At the state level, we were having to adapt our unemployment system. I mean, frankly, South Carolina's economy was booming. And so at the state level, it wasn't something that was really on our radar. Hey, let's focus on unemployment because our numbers have been so low. And then this comes and takes us back a little bit. So we've had to adjust. I know they've been trying hard working with vendors to update technology and make sure that citizens' applications are timely processed, but also having to adapt their system beyond not what they only had in South Carolina, but also with the changes at the federal level and looking for guidance from the Department of Labor as well.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. Hey, well, thank you so much for that. How about we kick it now? We've got a couple of questions from people on Facebook, and I do want to encourage for anybody watching, if you have any questions, feel free to type them down. We'll do our best to make sure that we get them. This is really a great opportunity to really ask any questions that you do have. Congressman Timmons, I do want to ask you one. We're getting a couple of questions here about the loans and more specifically the PPP, which we touched on a little bit earlier, but some people have a lot of questions about maybe what the effects of those loans will be after this all ends. A couple of people asking, if they're going to end up causing a greater burden on small businesses. I guess if you could kind of clarify at this point from the PPP, what are the effects as we start to maybe get back to a more normal point for these businesses?
So the idea is that your business is eligible for a loan, a small business, less than 500 employees. You are eligible for the average of the last 12 months payroll times 250%. So if your average of the last 12 months is $20,000, you're eligible for $50,000 in loans. If you continue to keep 90% of your people employed for the next 8 weeks, that loan becomes a grant. So the $50,000 you get, you have to use 75% of that money to keep your people employed. The other 25% can be used for utilities, it can be used for rent, it can be used for other payments, but you have to use 75% of that money to maintain 90% of your employment. There are strings attached with it. The whole idea is that we want to allow these businesses to float through this process, to be able to continue on when we reopen. This is a pause. We are trying to flatten the curve. We're trying to slow the spread. We're trying to do everything we can to save lives while also saving the economy. So we're going to reopen the economy here in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. We have to. We're reaching that point where people always talk about is the cure worse than disease. That conversation is becoming more and more important, and we have to reopen. The only thing that will save these businesses is to reopen, because the federal government cannot float the entire economy for months and months and months. We have to reopen, but we have to do it responsibly and safely. We're going to do that in the next few weeks. Businesses have been given a lifeline, and we have another $300 billion coming out to continue to make sure that the maximum number of businesses can survive over the next few weeks, and we're going to get reopened and go from there.
Here you go. And just on the topic of loans again, a lot of people talking about last time, some of those loans did go to some of the bigger chains and other businesses too. So part of what some people are talking about is that really this round is in a lot of ways meant for smaller businesses too.
So the first round, the first $350 billion, that money, 74% of it, the average loan was less than $150,000. So sure, Harvard got money, and sure, Ruth's Chris and Shake Shack, some of them are giving it back, but overwhelmingly, the money went to small business owners. There are exceptions to that. There are businesses that have abused this system, and we were faced as a legislature with this whole question of how do you create a structure that allows for everyone to survive through this without having abuses. And we decided that we just trusted the American people, and some people are going to abuse it. And I have a feeling that that's going to come back to haunt them. If you don't need this money and you take it, there's one box you have to click, and it says, is your business adversely affected by COVID-19? And are you in danger of closing? And if you click that box, you get the money. And that is the exclusive regulation over whether you're eligible for this money. So are people going to abuse it? Yes. It's 100% transparent. Everyone will know who takes it. If you take it and you shouldn't, I can promise you your customers will make you pay for it. So, overwhelmingly, this money is going to the people that need it most. This next tranche is going to go to the people that need it most. And we're doing everything we can to help the people that need help. The government has shut our economy down, and we're going to get back open, but we gotta get through this together.
All right. Well, thank you. How about now, State Senator Ross Turner? We talk about, as we get further into this, when it might be appropriate to open. Of course, you are on the Accelerate SC task force. You touched on that just a little bit here, but I guess give us an idea for a lot of people who don't know, what specifically will you be addressing on this task force?
And the governor set this up, and there's 5 different groups. There's governance, there's resources, there's information. I can't remember the other 2 off the top of my head. The 6 people from the legislature that have been sent, basically appointed, are in an advisory capacity on the resource committee, I'll call it, because I don't know what else they're going to call it until we get down there tomorrow. I think for the most part, this is going to be people, how do we jumpstart this? The governor is getting $1.9 billion from the federal government. It's not going to the legislature. It's going to the governor. And this group is really, the resource group is really determining how that $1.9 billion gets out into the South Carolina economy and back to, whether it's back to businesses, what is it and how does it do it? I think the big thing, again, to me, everybody's taking this initial hit. Everybody's more worried about what the long-term hit is right now. And I think that's, my gut would be, that's where you're going to see a lot of these resources is a jump start, but making sure it's not just a jump start and then you're out there on your own. So there's going to be resources. There's going to be, the main thing is information places where you can go one place at the state and get all the information you need to make your business successful. It's and hopefully everybody comes back. The fact is, I'm sure there's going to be some small businesses that don't make it back.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I imagine a lot of this too is kind of that side-by-side working with the federal government too, when it comes to knowing when it is appropriate to get everything back in.
Yeah, I think the president sent out the guidelines. I think the governor is definitely following the guidelines, and they're looking at what those guidelines are. I mean, nobody wants it on their face that they sent everybody out too early, and all of a sudden we all forgot our own personal responsibilities and the disease started spreading around. Nobody wants that. We're still in a very serious situation. There's no doubt about it. But I also think people are handling it seriously. And because of that, we can look at opening things back up.
Mm-hmm. And there is some really good upstate representation on that task force too. What does it say about kind of the impact that our district and really our area has when it comes to the state as a whole?
I think there's no doubt the upstate and Greenville-Spartanburg area, 4th Congressional District, is known as the business head of the state. And the great thing is the governor putting some of the appointees on this commission, on this task force, proves, I think, that they're going to look to the upstate to have some input on how to get the state going.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Senator, for that. Nate, yeah, you have a question for Representative Timmons.
Hey, Taggart, yes. Congressman Timmons, being political, we have a big fall planned for both the Democrat and the Republican parties. Can you tell us any information you have about the potential for the August conventions for both Democrats and Republicans?
So I got to be honest right now. We are working so hard to get the economy back open. These variables being discussed, but not much. We're doing everything we can to focus on reopening the economy, getting people back to work safely. We have to have our elections. We have to have our primaries. We have to have the general election. But people are appropriately focusing on how we're going to reopen the economy safely. Other than that, I think the rest will be determined after.
All right. Hey, we do, switching just back to the states right now. I do have a question here. This is from someone who just wrote in. This is for State Senator Scott Talley. We have a question here. Someone wants to know, are there any other bills going to be reviewed by the General Assembly when you go back to session, or is the focus solely on the budget?
Good question, and that is yet to be determined as well. As was alluded to earlier, we went back a couple weeks ago solely to deal with two matters. One was a continuing resolution, and that continuing resolution was to put in place a funding structure based on last year's budget for state government in the event the General Assembly is not able to return to Columbia and deal with the 2021 budget by June 30th. There were some differences in what was passed by the House and the Senate, so there's some work still to be done there. The second thing that we took up and the Senate passed, the House has not taken up yet, is a sine die resolution that would allow the General Assembly to return in September or at other times based on what may be needed to deal with certain matters. That would entail mainly the budget, but there would be other things that were pending before the General Assembly that could come up as well. I believe we set a 2-week time frame in September to do that. Again, that hadn't been passed by both bodies yet, so there's still some work to be done on that. I'm hoping that that will happen within the next 2 months. Obviously, we left somewhat abruptly because of what happened. There were a lot of bills that were pending. So hopefully when we go back, if not in June, then in September, pursuant to that sine die resolution, we'll be able to address certain matters. But the budget is going to be the primary priority based on the economic impact that this has had on the state of South Carolina. That continuing resolution is not meant to be a year-long funding mechanism. So we'll have to look at that and appropriately address whatever shortfalls we have to try to address the 2021 budget.
We're also here at the state level too. We also are getting some questions from people on our Facebook Live about the subject of reopening, and more specifically, somebody asking about churches. I'm wondering if there's any sort of response here from the state senators just about kind of addressing that. I know there are still some people concerned about churches and whether they'll be able to fully get back in again. I guess really one of the answers is there's so much unknown at this point. Hard to say exactly when that would be.
I think that's right. Hard to say. I think a lot of the things that Accelerate SC is looking at, as well as the governor, will continue to rely upon his guidance from the federal level. At any point when things begin to reopen, there's going to be an element of local control there. Churches, their congregations, how they meet. I know there have been some very creative meetings of worship services. Social distancing is probably something that is going to persist beyond this virus for some time in some way, shape, or form. But I don't have any direct information about that. I've gotten a lot of calls based on the restrictions being lifted in some ways this week from restaurant owners, anxious to know if they're next on the list and do we have any insight as to when that might be. I think they fully anticipate that whenever that comes, it's not going to be the doors are swung wide open and everybody come in. There may be seating limits and things like that we have to address, but I think those answers will be coming in the next couple of weeks.
Gotcha. And Senator Talley, you heard the news just like we did today about the schools for the remainder of the year. How about from a legislative standpoint here in the state? What challenges does something like that cause? Because it's obviously a decision that is very well thought out by the governor, had taken some time. What challenges does that bring even for the coming year?
Yeah, a whole lot of new challenges, frankly, because as we've alluded to on some of these other things, we've not had to address this. I mean, even look at something that seems so simple. I think the superintendent said today as well that across the state, cafeteria workers in our schools and bus drivers and teachers and others who have chipped in have delivered over 5 million meals to students. We have you know, a large population in the state of South Carolina depends on the meals that they get at school. So it's things like that, beyond e-learning, beyond standardized testing. Those requirements have been relaxed this year. I know, you know, I've got 3 children in public school, and one of the things that came out today they're talking about is combining of sort of the spring grading semester, so that you're going to get 1 grade instead of a 6-week or a 9-week grade. And so teachers have adapted in how they've presented work to the students to keep them on task, to keep educating them. Another thing that we really have to address, and something that was front and center in the legislature this year, is how we improve education. And so we've got summer reading camps that we were looking at expanding to help children continue to flourish and grow in their education. That's something we're going to have to look at. Is that something we can do via technology like we're doing right now? Are they going to be able to gather in small groups and spread out and have direct contact with the teacher this summer? So it's a lot of new challenges. Like I said earlier, I think the superintendent is determined to put together a group to look at these things, to see how we address them, to try to get back to, quote, normal as soon as we can for students across South Carolina. But realize between now and then, there's going to be a lot of work, there's going to be a lot of input, there's going to be a lot of changes that we're going to have to make in how we do things.
Right, and a lot of it too is also difference in access. You know, you talk about some kids having better access to technology than others, so there are also challenges from that standpoint too when it comes to the e-learning and everything else that goes into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, just briefly, I mean, there were so many positive things in education happening in the legislature this year beyond a reform debate we were having. I know Senator Turner was working with a group to look at school funding and how we address that. We were on the cusp of announcing a new committee that was going to look at class size, probably pretty appropriate in the environment we now in, to look at class size. And so hopefully those are things that we can address. Technology, rural broadband access. I mean, all these topics were being discussed in the legislature. I hope that we will take advantage of the opportunity we get when we go back to work efficiently to address some of these concerns, because we're seeing what some inaction and only discussion and not taking action on some of these things has impacted some people in this crisis.
Right. And Senator Turner, wanted to ask you too, you touched on it a little bit earlier about kind of what your biggest focus when it comes to Accelerate SC. We know there's a lot of different elements and facets that you guys are looking on that committee. Tell us though, kind of what are you most concerned with at this point when it comes to that committee and what you're starting to look at?
I mean, just like most committees, especially when they're this big, there's going to be a lot of people in that room that are used to being the chief. And I think there's always tough times when you have big groups of people like this as to who's going to be the chief. And I think the governor will set that out fairly quickly. But there's a lot of big egos in that room, and that's not a bad thing. That's why they were chosen, because they're successful and they have good ideas and big ideas. And I think that'll be the toughest thing, I think, is corralling all of the ideas and getting everybody focused on something that we all feel good about.
Yeah. We also are getting some comments from people on this stream just about, and this might be a question for each of you to maybe talk about. The questions for some people about experiencing some rent burden as we continue throughout all of this. Some talking about really having a tough time being able to make those payments as we move further. And of course, really no word as to when this will let up. I'm wondering if you have any response to those people and what would you tell them?
Can I start first?
Sure, yeah.
All right, great. So rent, mortgage forbearance, the federal government is doing everything they can to help people that need it most. And if you're unable to pay your rent or your mortgage, we want to find a structure that suits your needs. Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, we are constantly trying to push out guidance to allow banks, both for mortgages and for rent, to say, look, if people can't pay their mortgage or their rent, you need to give them opportunities to not miss payments, to say, look, here's 3 months off. We're going to structure it out at the end of your loan, or we're going to spread it out over the next 9-12 months of your rent. So anybody that's having challenges with that, my office is working really hard to make sure that everyone is in the best position possible to be on the other side of this as quickly as possible. So reach out to us if you think that your bank or your landlord is not doing what they ought to do. There are opportunities for the federal government to help. My cell phone number is everywhere. It's 864-616-8821. Forbearance is the term, and it should be an opportunity for everyone that is in dire straits, and we want to help the people that need help. So if you're in that situation, reach out if you're not getting the help you need, and we'll do everything we can to help.
Very good. Anything else either of you would like to add, Senators Turner and Talley?
Yeah, I would just say briefly, as many folks are aware, the South Carolina Supreme Court Chief Justice has issued a stay on eviction proceedings. And so those are not taking place right now. I have not seen any recent order as to when those Landlord-Tenant Act type cases may commence again. But right now, those eviction proceedings are not being conducted in South Carolina.
All right. All right, thank you. Hey, I do want to return back. Congressman Timmons, we talk about the stimulus. You'd mentioned that the stimulus payment towards the beginning of this. A lot of people have received those payments, not just here, but across the country. We know there are still some people waiting for them too. There's also been some people who may be a little bit confused, who may have filed with a third-party bank, have tax preparations. I guess I'm sure that you've kind of been hearing about that too at the federal level. I guess what would you tell the people who maybe it seems that they're to be getting one? Where could they go for help, and maybe some clarification for that?
So that's a great question. Thank you. If you filed taxes in the last 2 years and you did not pay taxes on more than $75,000 worth of income, you are entitled to a $1,200 economic relief check. So the way that you're going to get that is wherever you sent your tax refund, that's where it's going to go. Now, if you used H&R Block or any of the other tax preparation services, they will currently have your check going towards them. You can go on our website, and there is an IRS website as well that will direct you towards it. But if you did file with a tax preparation company, you can go to either my website or to the federal government, to IRS, and they will give you a way to put your own direct deposit information into their system. Now, this money's going to get to you eventually. If it's not getting to you quickly, please reach out to my office. It's timmons.house.gov is our website, but we're here to help. And if you're having challenges, we're here. Let us know. But there are a lot of different ways for you to make sure you're getting that money efficiently. And if you're having challenges, just reach out.
Yeah, and I do want to ask you a follow-up too. Do you anticipate there being perhaps any more payments like this in the future? Any more sort of stimulus payments to continue to kind of help get the economy going?
So we've had phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and we're about to have phase 3.5, and there's talk of phase 4. I've got to be honest with you. We've got 25, 26, 27 trillion dollars worth of debt. With our economic downturn, we're going to have probably $30 trillion worth of debt. The federal government cannot continue to float the U.S. economy. We have to get back to work. So if the cases rise, if the death toll rises, there's a potential that we will have further economic relief checks directly to taxpayers. But the only economic relief that's going to make a big difference is getting back to work. And we've got to do that. And we've got to do it quickly. We've got to do it safely. And I mean, that's the only thing that's going to truly help the economy and the 350 million Americans.
We thank you very much for that. We have seen, we actually do how about we go ahead? This is Chairman Smith had a question for Senator Turner. Let's go ahead and turn that. Do we have, is Chairman
Yes.
Smith?
Yes, can the senators tell us how this virus has affected their businesses?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Curtis. And before I jump onto that, I want to first say, and I'm sorry I didn't say it earlier when y'all talked about how Spartanburg and Greenville are working together. Thank you. Thank you. We need more cooperation like that everywhere. And we're one Republican Party, and we need to look like that. And I appreciate y'all working together. So anyway, my personal business. Yeah, I have 24 employees. 16 of them are working from home. As soon as we kind of realized what was going on, and I came back from Columbia. We were short on some laptops. We immediately bought 8 laptops. We had 8 others for people to take home. We've got schools being out now. Even when we're talking about trying to get back into it, we've got employees with school-age students that aren't going to be able to come right back to work because they're going to have to be home taking care of their kids, since they don't have a babysitter and they're not in school. And actually, I won't say taking care of kids anymore, teaching their kids, because so many moms have been turned into, and parents altogether have been turned into teachers. But our business, we turned ours, I'm in the insurance business, we sell a lot. We kind of cut off the sales, obviously, and just started turning to being a resource. We insure a lot of small businesses. And so we turned into being a resource for them, explaining to them the CARES Act, explaining to them how to apply for the money, explaining to them how their employees, if they let them go, can go through due, and holding their hand and trying to walk them through this just like anybody else. But I mean, it's affected every business. It's our business. It's, I love a big office. I love everybody working together. I'm a social person, so it's one of those things. It's strange going in and it being quiet, and all day it's quiet, and it's but it's good. We're going to come out of it.
And Senator Talley, I don't know if you'd want to weigh in on that too.
Yeah, well, it's been different, but again, I think it's been good. I've said for a long time that the legal profession is on the back end of technology. We do a lot of transactional work in our practice, and so whether it's a residential closing or a commercial closing, having people come in to still conduct business at times, they need these loans right now for lower interest rates or to cash flow, equity, things like that. So we've had to divide up people in different conference rooms. Some of our staff has been able to work from home. We've utilized this technology to do certain family court matters. We've used this technology to do mediations to try to keep people's life on track as best they can through means that are a little bit different. A lot more phone conversations than in-office conversations right now. But we're going to keep plowing on. We're in the service industry. Like I said, we've got 9 employees, so we're about as small business can get. They've got families, and obviously we want to try to provide for them as much as we can. So we're gonna get through it as best we can.
And jump in real quick. I have a CrossFit gym and a yoga studio and a real estate company, and I don't manage any of those because I'm not allowed to under the house ethics rules. But my business partner and the managers of those businesses are working extremely hard. The CrossFit gym and the yoga studio have closed down 5+ weeks ago, and we've gone online. We do Zoom classes. We send the playlist out for the class prior to it. Honestly, everyone is doing everything they can to adjust to these challenges, and we're going to get through this. We're going to get through it together, and we're going to find efficiencies in our businesses and our daily lives, and then just general human interaction that allows us to come out of this on this side stronger. So we're going to get through it together, and I think we got a couple more weeks, but 1, 2, 3 weeks, we're going to get back to whatever the new normal is.
Right. All right. Hey, well, thank you for that. How about something we haven't quite touched on yet, the topic of hospitals, and I think this could be good for all of you to talk about too. The focus has been in a lot of ways on PPE, making sure that the staffs and hospitals across, South Carolina, but across the country, making sure that they have enough protective equipment in there. How do you ensure that, the folks in there have what they need, and what's being done to make sure that they do have that?
I'll jump in first. The federal government is working extremely hard to get the resources they need to the states. And a lot of the suppliers are abroad, and many of them are in China. That's been a big challenge. So a lot of our domestic supply chain has had to retool their manufacturing facilities to create PPE. A friend of mine I grew up with, Ivan Mathena, at Paper Cutters, they're not 2 miles from my house, and they have completely retooled their entire manufacturing to deliver thousands and thousands and thousands of masks to people that need them. And stories like that are going all over the upstate. And we have a manufacturing base here that is going to adjust. But more importantly, this is not going to ever happen again. We are going to bring back our pharmaceutical supply chain. We're going to bring back our PPE supply chain. We're going to bring back our national security components that are necessary to make sure that this never happens again. We're going to get through this, and it won't happen again.
Senator Talley, would you like to weigh in on that too?
Yeah, I think one thing at the state level that will be looked at is this one-time stimulus money coming from the federal government to the states. As Senator Turner said earlier, it's going to be, as we understand right now, at the governor's discretion on how that is spent. But I think taking into account a lack of resources for something like this, should it ever happen in the future, I think you will see an emphasis on, at our state level, being prepared for something like this. So you don't have to wait. So you don't have to depend on foreign governments and things of that nature to provide these type supplies in the future. So I'm hopeful that once that money arrives, that the governor will take that into consideration. And to our healthcare workers, I saw earlier today, we get a daily update from DHEC. Right now, about 44% of the hospital beds across the state of South Carolina are vacant. That's a good thing. I mean, that's why we hit pause, was to try to not overwhelm the healthcare system in our hospitals to the tune where they could not handle the people. And you've seen, as always happens in South Carolina when we have a tragedy, be it what happened in Charleston several years ago, or hurricanes, or even what happened in Seneca here recently with the tornado, people in South Carolina come together and they try to share resources. They try to help their neighbors, be it upstate or low country or vice versa. But I do think a huge component of what we've got to focus on is spending this money wisely and being prepared so we don't have to rely on others to provide, in particular, as you mentioned, our healthcare workers, things that they're going to need should something like this ever happen again.
Nice, thank you. Senator Turner, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think Senator Talley probably hit it on the head. It's one of those things that I was sitting there thinking while he was talking. Now it's easy to talk about that we're going to spend money on pandemic supplies. If we had talked a year ago that we're going to spend $25 million on pandemic supplies, we'd have been thrown out of office. Everybody's, why are you wasting money on something like that? It's never going to happen. So it's one of those things that, now that we have the hindsight, and we'll have, it's always, hindsight's always 20/20. I think you'll find us obviously being a little more prepared in the future for what we can't be prepared for.
It's a perfect segue. You knew exactly what I was going to ask next. I think really, you could talk about this. There's a lot of takeaways that we could get from this pandemic. I mean, you could talk about it at the state level, the federal level. And I think that's an interesting point there. What do we learn moving forward after being in a pandemic like this? I mean, it applies to federal and state. I mean, Congressman Timmons, what do you think about that? Moving forward here, what are some takeaways that we can have to be better prepared for anything like this?
I think there's going to be possibly years of studies done on how we reacted, how we should have reacted, how we could have reacted, and the variables that were at play here. Ultimately, unfortunately, we're going to see that the world is a lot smaller than it used to be. And what happens in China has an impact here. They have wet markets there that we have bats and other animals that are being eaten by humans, and that is going to create a health risk. We're not going to see those anymore. The international community is going to stop the Chinese government from allowing this to continue. But that's just part of this conversation. And ultimately, we got to be very cautious about how we proceed here. We need to be as reasonable and as reserved as possible. The answer is going to be not on one extreme or the other. It's going to be, we need to take all the information in. We need to assess how this happened, how it could have been prevented, what we could have done, and find a path forward that prevents it in the future. And this is going to be a tough few months. And ultimately, in 2 years, this is going to be behind us. This is going to be a distant memory. But we're going to have a tough time getting through this. We're going to get through it in the next few weeks. We're going to reopen. But until we have vaccines and until we have all the resources to combat this long term, it's going to be an ongoing issue. But it will be behind us in a year or two, and we will get through it, and we will be able to learn from it, and we will make sure it never happens again. And it's going to be a tough road ahead, but we're going to get through it. We're going to get through it together.
Representative Timmons, we also have a question here from Suzette Jordan for you. Suzette, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Sure. Congressman Timmons, I understand that there is a vote tomorrow in the House of Representatives. What are your plans for getting back to Washington, and how do you think the vote will go?
So the Senate voiced it, and the House has said they're going to have a recorded vote. And there's always talks of these proxy voting and whatnot. That's not going to happen. And so I've got to get back, and I have a decision to make in the next 4 hours. I'm either going to drive back at midnight, or I have a 7:55 a.m. flight out of GSP into Reagan National Airport. And I'm got another backup flight that goes from GSP to Atlanta to DC. So I'm going to get back for my 1:30, 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon vote. How, I'm still working on. But this is the challenge that we all face. So many flights are shut down. So many people that are in Congress are going to have a challenging time getting back. And I'm just going to do everything I can. It's my job to get back there, so I'm going to get it done. But we'll see.
All right. Thank you for that, Suzette. That's an interesting point too, as you mentioned there. We have a long road to go. We've taken a lot of steps here with the loans, the stimulus. Where do you see things headed next in terms of the road to recovery?
We've got to get open. We don't have the money on the federal level to float our economy for more than another couple of weeks. We just don't. And the longer we wait to reopen, the more businesses will not reopen. So, and with that, and I talk about businesses, but it all comes down to people. Businesses employ people. People pay for their family to eat. And so if we have, 20, 30, 40, 50 million people that are unemployed, they're not going to be able to feed their family. And all those people are going to require government assistance long term. So we've got to reopen. We've got to do it safely. We've got to do it responsibly. But we absolutely have to reopen as quickly as possible, because the cure cannot be worse than the disease. And we're at the tipping point where that's the case.
And you talked about the confidence, right? The consumer confidence to make sure that we can still go out and do this again. How do you think we can kind of help restore that confidence here as we move forward?
It's all about math. It's about testing. It's about the number of fatalities. It's about the number of people that have it, the number of people that require hospitalization. The more we know about COVID-19, the better position we are to fight it. And as we get antibody testing, as we get convalescent plasma banks up to where we're able to treat people that get COVID-19, all of these components, more ventilators, all of these things are the path to overcoming it. And the more preparedness we have for the healthcare system, the more ability we have to fight the virus, the better position we're going to be to reopen. We're working so hard. The state, the federal government, everybody's working very hard to get there. And it's going to happen soon, and we're going to get reopened. And I'm just hoping it's sooner rather than later.
Very good. Thank you for that. We'll go to closing statements in just a little bit here. We do have one more question, though. It's a question that we've gotten into our newsroom quite a bit over the last probably week or so. And it does involve the stimulus payments we've been talking about. People wondering if people on Social Security are going to be able to receive the stimulus and how they would receive the stimulus.
That money goes directly into the same account that their Social Security goes into. If they get a check, it'll come added to that check. But if it is direct deposited, it will be direct deposited into the same account. If anybody has any problem with that, and they're not getting their check, please reach out to my office. Again, our website is timmons.house.gov, and my cell phone number is 864-616-8821. We've got a team. We're working as hard as we can to help everybody that we can. But if you have any challenges, please reach out, and we will get you whatever relief we can.
All right. Well, thank you for that. We're getting closer to the end of our conversation here. I do want to make sure that we cover as much as we can in all of this. I wanted to go around to each of you and wanted to see if basically two parts here. Your message for the people watching this. We've talked a lot about different topics throughout all of this regarding COVID-19. Your message for those folks, and then if there's anything else that you'd want them to know about or that you want to talk about. And since Congressman Timmons just went, we can go ahead. We'll give you a little bit of a break here. We'll start with Senator Turner. Senator Turner, we'll turn it over to you right now.
Sure. I think the main thing I would tell people right now is, as I told somebody the other day, I said, to win the football game, you got to win two halves. I think we've won the first half of this battle against COVID-19. I said, but we still have a second half to win. Now, part of that at the end of it will come with the opening of more businesses. I think we'll see that the next executive order runs out next, the 27th, which is next Monday, and that's on sports club, fitness centers, and those type locations. It'll be interesting. I don't see him issuing another executive order on those. So I think you'll see a little more loosening up on that. The one thing I would tell people that in South Carolina is, the one good thing is the Senate had not done the budget yet. The budget for next year will not be set now until the fall, after we have a quarter's worth of knowing the impact on the state budget. So it's just like our home budget or a work budget or anything like that. It's going to be nice to know that we are setting the budget for the rest of the year based on some information we have at hand. That's a great thing. The good thing is South Carolina was going into this in a strong position. And I think that's probably one of the best things about being in South Carolina is we were in a strong financial position going into this. There's no doubt it's been hit and will be hit even harder as we go through the summer months, as much as we depend on tourism, as we see how that comes back. But I'd still rather be in South Carolina fighting COVID-19 than anywhere else. And I think we've done a great job. Hopefully coming out of this, we're going to even do a better job and show the rest of the nation that yes, y'all can follow our lead.
Nice. Yes, well, thank you for that. We see it now. We see the state all coming together, especially when it comes to that Accelerate SC task force. So very nice. And thank you so much for your time tonight. We appreciate that, Senator. Senator Scott Talley, how about you? Anything you want to add, the message to folks, and kind of where we go from here?
Yeah, just to follow up on what Senator Turner just said, we in South Carolina are a prideful people. And so there is a strong element to personal responsibility driving this recovery effort. That's going to be from how we interact with each other. That's going to be as we open businesses back up, how business is conducted, people going into these establishments. It's been great to see so many of the local establishments, following the advice from CDC and the governor's orders to do the best they can to provide for their employees and their customers during this time. So that's something I hope and I strongly believe people are going to take to heart, is the personal responsibility element as we all work through this and come out of this. I think from a legislative perspective, Senator Turner was exactly right. Thank goodness we were where we were in the session, because our economy had been booming, and I have every belief that it will be again. But I think this is going to cause us to step back. I think it's going to make us even better stewards of the state dollars that we'll be entrusted with as we look at the budget going forward. And lastly, I would just say, as I said earlier, our office is open. We're not in Columbia, but our email is working. Our phones are working. People can reach out if they've got questions about unemployment, businesses that have questions about what this means. I would just say to the audience as well, there is a live stream tomorrow. I believe it's at 3 o'clock that the Department of Employment and Workforce Development is putting on specifically for business owners. So we will continue to try to push those resources out to educate people. But if there's anything we can do to help, in particular with folks going through certain things and provide information, or at least put you in touch with the right people, certainly reach out. And echo again the thanks for this forum. It's always nice to go to club meetings and civic organizations when we're home from session and be able to talk with folks. So I appreciate everybody working together to provide this tonight. It's been good for us, but I hope it's also been good for people across the upstate to try to answer some questions and provide some resources.
Very nice. Thank you for that, Senator Talley. And of course, Congressman Timmons, we know you have a very busy couple of days ahead. I guess really your message here to South Carolinians and anything else you'd like to talk about.
So really, these are challenging times. So many people are struggling, and we need to do everything we can to help the people that are struggling to get through this. The government created this problem to save lives, and it is the appropriate path, but we are going to reopen. We're going to get through this, but we're going to get through it together. And we have to band together. We have to work together to help everyone make it out on the other side. I want to thank my friends, Senator Turner, Senator Talley, Chairman Leupp, and Taggart. Thank you so much for putting this on, and Chairman Smith, wherever he's gone. I appreciate y'all putting this on. We're going to get back to work. We're going to get back to work here in the next few weeks. It is about personal responsibility. We're going to slowly reopen. We're going to start as the governor has started. Next week, there'll be other businesses. The week after that, there'll be other businesses. If you are sick, or if you are older, if you're 65, 70, older, you need to take precautions to make sure that you do not expose yourself. We have to find a path forward that is not a light switch. It's not all open. It's not all closed. We have to find a way that we can reopen our economy. We can get back to work, but save lives. That is the most important thing we can do. We have to think that way. It's not an all or nothing equation. And the more emphasis we can place on that, the better off we will be. We're going to do everything we can on the federal level. I know that my friends in the Senate will do everything they can on the state level. But this is not just a government thing. This is a society thing. This is a citizen thing. Do your part. Do everything you can to help us get through this, and we will overcome it together, and it will pass. I'm just praying for everyone and hoping it passes quickly. So thank you for having us on, and we will be looking forward to brighter days in the future.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Congressman. And thank you all for taking the time here tonight to chat with the folks at home about what's happening. And for now, I'm going to turn it over to Chairman Nate Leupp.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you, Congressman Timmons and Senators Talley and Turner. And that was not planned with the Timmons-Talley-Turner, but it sounds really good, so we'll go with it. This has been a 4th District event. Hopefully on Monday night, I will be assuming the chairmanship of the 4th District. It's a 4-year term, and we'll do a few more events like these over the next 4 years. So thank you for tuning in. And if we can do anything for you, please email me at chairman@greenvillegop.com. And our congressman gave his personal cell phone, so feel free to use that. I have used that, and he answers. So thank you very much. And with that, thank you, Taggart and YFF especially. with that, we will call it a end of this meeting. So thank you very much.